Hello everyone, I am Dr. Vinayak, Assistant Professor and HOD Department of Botany, SVS College, Bantwal. Today I will give an information about a topic on ecological adaptations of plant. So first going to what are adaptations? So any feature of an organism or its part which enable it to exist under conditions of its habitat is called as adaptations. There are different types of adaptations acquired by the organisms for the diversification in the nature. The adapted may be morphological, anatomical, physiological, or reproductive adaptations. So, going to the classification of the plant based on adaptation, some of the plants are called as axolophyte, some of them are halophyte, samophyte, or etc. So, generally, based on our availability of the water, the plants are classified into different types. That's one is hydrophytes. That means the plants which are growing in water or near to the water. Second category, they are called as xerophytes. The plant adapted to survive under various scarcity of the water. There are two types of xerophyte, that's a physiologically and physically xerophyte. And the mesophytes, these are the plant which grow in an environment which is neither very dry nor very wet. These are the common plants which are growing in those conditions are called as mesophytes. So based on the availability of water or the resources, the ecological adaptations of the plants are classified into axolophyte, halophyte, lithophyte, and psychrophytes and sclerophytes. So like that, the plant are adapted to the different environmental conditions. So based on your syllabus, so we can look at first the morphological and anatomical adaptations of the hydrophytes. So hydro means the plant water. The plant which grow in a water, those are called as hydrophytes. For example, Vallisneria, Hydrilla, Chara. So these plants are generally referred as the hydrophytes. So this is a Hydrilla and this is a Chara and this is a Vallisneria. So like that, the plant which are growing in a water body, so those are referred as hydrophytes. So these hydrophytes, they are adapted to the different environmental conditions in a water bodies. That may be temperature of the water, osmotic concentration, toxicity of the water, and dissolved oxygen, and also the nutrients. So based on these, the hydrophytes are classified into three types. One is submerged hydrophyte, floating hydrophytes, and the amphibious hydrophytes. The first category, that is a submerged hydrophyte, the plant which grow below the water surfaces. They are not in direct contact with the air. So there are two types of submerged hydrophyte. One is a rooted submerged hydrophytes, example Vallisneria, Hydrilla, Potamogeton. Another one is free floating hydrophytes, that is Utricularia and Ceratophylla. The some of the plant, they are freely floating on a water surfaces. Those are called as free floating hydrophytes. So the example for free floating hydrophytes are the Wolfia and Pistia, etc. So and some of them are amphibious hydrophytes. So they are in an amphibious condition, they are completely not submerged inside the water, or they may the leaves are on floating on the water surfaces. For example, the Nymphia, Marsilia, Sagittata. So these are the some example for amphibious hydrophytes. So going to the adaptations, ecological adaptations by the hydrophytes. The first adaptation one is root system. They are poorly developed. The entire surfaces can absorb the water. Root caps are usually absent. So like that, some adaptations was adapted by the hydrophyte to live in water conditions. Stem is very delicate, usually greenish in color, and leaves are free floating and upper surfaces of the, and they consist of usually the waxy cuticle will be there on the leaf surfaces. So usually these are some other adaptations by the leaves, and even pollination with the help of water, and usually the vegetative reproduction takes place is a common method of reproduction in these adaptations. The morphological adaptations, root may be entirely absent in some plants just like Wolfia and Salvia, and these are the some morphological adaptations. And these are the anatomical adaptations. The reduction in a protecting structure, increased aeration by the consist of parenchyma cells, and cuticle usually totally absent in submerged part, and usually the epidermis is not protecting layers. So like that, so many adaptations by the hydrophytes. And these are some other adaptations, mechanical adaptations, that is the mechanical tissues are absent, thick walled parenchyma cells totally absent, and usually this is an hydrilla stem showing the adaptations. So these are some other vascular adaptations by the hydrophytes, and this is the nymphia petiole showing the complete anatomical adaptations. So look at some vascular structures. The xylem is completely reduced because commonly they grow in a water. So usually the conductive tissue, that is the phloem, is well developed, and sometimes vascular bundles are towards the centric, and secondary growth is completely absent in case of these hydrophytes. These are some physiological adaptations was developed by the hydrophytes. Okay. In the previous section, we are discussing about the hydrophytes adaptations that continue with the adaptations of the mesophytes. So usually the mesophytes root is well developed, and the stem are generally aerial, solid in nature, and leaves are larger and broad, and they consist of cuticle. So these are some general adaptations. Epidermis is well developed. Stomata is generally present on both surfaces, and usually leaves, mesophyll leaf is differentiated in palisade and spongy parenchyma, and they have the well developed vascular tissue system. So the next one is the xerophytes. So we can look at the morphological and anatomical adaptations of the xerophyte. Some of the xerophytic characters, so that is generally they are grow in a dry conditions. They may be physically or physiologically dry conditions. So and the classification based on the drought resistance. So drought escapers, one is group of the plant, they will escape the drought condition. Second group, they are the drought enduring plant, and the third category is to drought resistance. So these category of the plant of the xerophyte based on the overcome of the drought or the physiological scarcity of the water. What are the morphological adaptations of the roots? We can look at the first. Root system is very well developed because they are growing in a physically dry condition. That means the water availability is very less. So that's why the roots are well developed, and they consist of root hairs and root crops. And usually the example for some xerophytes are the euphorbia, opentia, and the leaves are highly reduced, and they are modified into scales. So usually in case of the lamina may be long or narrow needle like. In case of the pinus, the leaf is completely modified into needles in case of pinus, or sometime maybe leaflet will be modified, or the leaf is modified into foliage leaves. So like that, so many plants they will be modified into different ecological conditions to overcome these xerophytic conditions. So some common best example for the xerophyte are the euphorbia, acacia, zizopus, caparis. So these are all the some xerophytic plant. So coming to the anatomical adaptations, here the anatomically if you take the cross section of the roots, so usually root hairs and root grafts are well developed, and usually root may be fleshy or they consist of stored water. In case of the asparagus, the root is modified into a small tuber like structure will be there. So like that, the various anatomical adaptations by the plant to overcome these problems. So usually another one character, that's hypodermis, is several layers, and sclerenchymatous stomata or sunken in nature. So like that, the plants anatomically, they have adopted a different structure to overcome these xeric conditions. So leaves are usually non-succulent xerophyte possesses well-developed heavy cuticle will be present. Example, in case of the nerium, the mesophyll is developed into palisade and spongy. Stomata is sunken stiff. Mechanical tissue is well developed. When compared with the hydrophytes, the xerophyte have a well developed mechanical tissue. So this is a cross section TS part of the stem or needle of the casuarina. This shows the sunken stomata and usually the thick cuticle and also the epidermal layers, and usually the spit will be present. The next one group of plant, that's a halophytes. These are the plant is commonly grow in a saline or the usually grow in a salty environmental conditions. They have the some adaptation, that's a physiologically dry condition. Here the usually the water will be there, but it cannot be properly utilized by the plant. That's why physiologically dry condition. They have some adaptations of halophytes. That's one is vivipary condition. That means the plant seeds, they will germinate till they attach to the mother plant. That's one important adaptations. And also they consist of pneumatophores. They help in exchanging of the gases. The anatomical features of the halophytes are they consist of several layers of the cortex is made up of star-shaped or the stellar cells. Epidermal cells are heavy, thickened, and hypodermis cortex are thickened in nature. And usually the cuticle is well developed, and sometimes these halophyte consist of milky latex also, and usually mesophyll is well developed. Okay, so these are the some special adaptation adopted by the halophytes to overcome the ecological problems. In the previous section, we are discussed about the adaptations of plant to the different environmental conditions that continue with the adaptations of the epiphytes. That's the morphological adaptations of the epiphytes. So usually the epiphytes, they are commonly grow on other plant. The only for the support they will take the help of the other plant, and usually they will have a special root adaptations, that is absorbing root will be occur in these plants. And usually they will have a special types of roots. There are three types of root: normal root, that is a normal absorbing root, clinging root, and also the aerial root will exist in these plant. So usually the aerial root, they consist of spongy and green root which hanging downwards in the atmosphere and absorb the moisture from the air. So usually the stem of these epiphytic plant, they have well developed stem will be present, and usually sometimes there may be a pseudo stem also present. The leaves, they are fleshy and leathery in nature, and they are highly thickened because to adapt to some xerophytic conditions by these epiphytic plant. And usually the velamen tissues, these are the hygroscopic tissues. They help for the absorption of moisture from the atmosphere, and they consist of exodermal cells. They are thick-walled and lignified cells, and this is how the transverse section of the epiphytic roots shows the different structure. That's a cortex tissues, parenchyma sleeves, and also the protoxylem and metaxylem arrangement will be present. And this also shows the ectodermal cells in the root of the epiphytes. So apart from that, the other anatomical feature, presence of the cuticles and stomata will be present, and they look like a succulent plant. Okay, so these are the some ecological group, that's the hydrophytes, epiphytes, and mesophyte and the xerophyte, and also the halophites. So if you have any doubt or the questions, so please contact to the below number. Thank you.